When I first saw Mia, my wife, I was completely stunned by her beauty. We met when I was 22 at a friend's wedding. She was a close friend of the bride, and I was the groom. They sat us together at a table, hoping we'd hit it off. As soon as she sat down and we started talking, we realized we had a lot in common and immediately clicked. We talked through dinner, then hit the dance floor, drinking and dancing all night. Eventually, we kissed right there in the middle of the floor. Afterward, the bride and groom came over, excited to play matchmaker, asking what was going on between us. We just shrugged and kept enjoying the night. We left without exchanging numbers, but about a week later, she texted me. The bride had given her my number. Of course, I said yes to meeting her again, and that led to a relationship. Our relationship was great overall, with only minor arguments here and there. Nothing serious. About 2 years in, I asked her to marry me, and less than a year after that, we were married. We had been married for just over a year when everything came crashing down, just before our first anniversary. Small things started bothering me. She grew more protective of her phone, girls' nights out became more frequent, and our sex life nearly vanished. I brought these concerns up several times, but she brushed me off, telling me I was just letting my insecurities get the best of me. She acted as if what I felt or tried to express didn't matter at all. Slowly, I became colder. I stopped giving her goodbye kisses before leaving for work, and unless something urgent came up, we barely spoke. One night, while she was asleep, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps, but found nothing suspicious. Based on stories I had read online, I decided to check her car. I grabbed her keys and looked inside, where I found a second phone. In that moment, I knew what was happening, but I wanted solid proof before confronting her. I didn't want her to be able to say it was just a one-time thing or come up with some lame excuse. I went through the phone and found messages from only one contact. I read through every text, then connected the phone to my computer and printed every message and photo. I spent the night researching divorce lawyers. The next day, I spent hours in my home office reading lawyer bios and finally found one I liked. I emailed him, but since it was a Saturday, he wasn't in the office. I wanted to know who the guy was, so I took the number from the phone and typed it into my own phone to call, planning to pretend I was from Spectrum because everyone has Spectrum, right? But instead of Spectrum, the contact name Jack popped up. It took me a moment to realize who Jack was, and when I did, I lost it. I was yelling and cursing in my office. My wife came to check on me, but when I saw her, I told her to get the hell out. She shut the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at her or raised my voice like that before. The rest of the day, I sat silently raging, staring at the wall. I called one of my friends from the wedding, the groom, and told him I needed a drink and asked if he could come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and really needed to drink. Without saying another word, I grabbed all the printed messages and headed to the bar. I arrived first and ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was down to my last shot when my friend Ted showed up. I told him straight away that Mia was cheating on me. He gave me some sympathy and asked if he wanted to know with whom. I told him it was Jack. He got visibly upset. He had been the one to introduce me to Jack. All he could say was sorry over and over. Jack and I were never very close. We weren't the kind of friends who'd hang out, but we were friendly whenever we bumped into each other at gatherings. I told Ted not to mention any of this to anyone since I had just found out and hadn't yet spoken to Mia or a lawyer. I asked Ted not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me, to say I was having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night. Around 3 a.m., I called an Uber and went home. It was the first time I looked at my phone since calling Ted, and I saw missed calls and a bunch of texts from Mia asking where I was, when I'd be home, and if I was okay. When I got home, she was asleep on the couch. I quietly walked to our bedroom and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up with her lying beside me. I got dressed and left the house. I picked up my car and went to my office, burying myself in work for the day. I returned home around 10 p.m, and to my surprise, Mia was there to greet me. She told me she had made dinner and asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I declined and went to bed. She followed me shortly after, asking what was wrong. I told her to leave me alone because I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me, and finally, I snapped and yelled for her to stop and leave me alone. The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later that day. I confirmed and prepared myself. As I was leaving, Mia had made breakfast and asked to talk. I made a small plate and sat down with her. She started by saying I had been acting differently and went on about how I had changed, wanting to know why. I told her work had been stressful, but that soon everything would be over. I finished eating and told her I had to go. I went to my office, counting down the minutes until my meeting with the lawyer. Before I left, I told my assistant I was going out to lunch with a client since Mia sometimes called my work. The meeting went well. I handed over all the evidence I had gathered. The lawyer told me he was sorry about what was happening, but glad I had collected this information. He explained that since we lived in a no-fault state, Mia wouldn't have claims on most of my money. I admitted I hadn't thought about that and had just been focused on divorcing her as soon as possible. He asked me to keep the evidence, but I said I'd prefer if he made copies since I hadn't told Mia I knew yet, and I didn't want to hear any excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make the copies. I asked when Mia would be served with the papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I thanked him and left. When I got home, Mia wasn't there. I called her with no answer. I tried again, still no response. I texted her, saying I didn't care if she was with Jack right now. She needed to get home because we needed to talk. Not a minute later she called, asking what I was talking about. I told her simply to get home. She arrived about 15 minutes later, and I said, "Wow, look at that. 15 minutes. That's about the same distance between here and Jack's, isn't it?" She looked at me, stunned. I gave her a moment to gather herself, but she just stared. I asked, "Well, nothing to say?" She tried to deny and gaslight me, and I let her go on. She got worked up and began insulting me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence. At first, I showed her just the edge of the stack and said, "Look at this mountain of proof I've gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout one by one. She told me to stop and started crying. She tried to apologize and said she loved me. I asked, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before, when you were so adamant about degrading and insulting me just a minute ago?" She hung her head and kept saying how sorry she was. I put my hand up and told her, "Don't touch me." She said, "We'll go to the bedroom and do whatever you want." I looked her deeply in the eyes and said, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you. Now get a bag, gather your clothes, and get the hell out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her since then. I'm sorry this is so long, and if there are any spelling mistakes. I'm curious to hear from those who have been where I am. What can I expect moving forward? Thanks for reading. After I posted the first part of this, you all gave me a ton of advice, so I followed most of it. This morning, I decided to take some control back over my life, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for STDs. That appointment is in 2 days. Next, I started reaching out to the people close to me, my father and a few friends. They've all been really supportive, offering advice and asking if I needed help with anything. But since I felt I had this mess under control, I declined. Then I contacted her family. I sent a text to her mum and dad, thanking them for welcoming me into their family and expressing my gratitude for all they had done for me. I also told them that Mia and I were getting divorced and that I would miss them terribly. Honestly, not really. I always found them suffocating. While they're great people, I'm happy I won't have to deal with them anymore. I told them if they had any questions, they should feel free to ask. I didn't hear back for a while, so I moved on to Mia's sister. This part hurt a bit because Mia's sister and I were good friends, and I knew this would damage that relationship. I texted her, saying, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Mia and I are getting a divorce. I wanted you to know and to thank you for accepting me like a brother from day one. I'll be around if you ever need anything from me." Around the time I sent that text, her parents responded. Here's how the conversation went. Parents: "We're so sorry to hear this. What happened? Why hasn't Mia said anything to us?" Me: "Mia has been in an affair that's lasted at least a year. I suspect it started before our wedding. I'm not sure why she hasn't reached out to you, but I think you should call her. She left the house." Parents: "No, we haven't heard from her. We'll call her. Thanks for letting us know. Are you sure she was having an affair?" Me: "I'm positive. I found their texts." Parents: "We're so sorry she did that. We'll try to get in touch with her." After dealing with her family, I moved on to Jack's fiancée. I can't remember if I mentioned in the first part that he's engaged. I know it came up in some comments. I thought this would be difficult, expecting Mia and Jack to have conspired, some plan. But either Mia didn't tell her, or they're just idiots. I texted her around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for coffee or something. By 2:05, she agreed and told me to meet her at a grimy hipster coffee shop across from her work at 2:30. I arrived first, ordered my terrible coffee, and waited a few minutes. She walked in, ordered her drink, and joined me. I told her there was no easy way to say what I was about to tell her, so I just blurted out, "Jack has been cheating on her with my wife. It's been going on for over a year." She was obviously shocked. I told her I'd only found out a few days ago and that I knew I should have told her then, but I had a divorce to start and my own mess to deal with. She asked how I found out, and I told her everything I'd written in the first post. Then I asked if she wanted to see the evidence I had gathered. I pulled out a binder. She grabbed the binder, skimmed through the messages and pictures, and silently started crying. I told her she was more than welcome to take the binder or extra copies if she wanted to confront Jack or see if he would lie. She thanked me, stood up, took the binder, and I told her to let me know if she needed anything. She nodded and walked out, looking very defeated. "I know you all told me to stay sober, keep a level head and all that, but my world just came crashing down on me. I'm going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, smoke cigars, and blast music. After this week, I'll stop feeling sorry for myself and get back to my usual routine." On a more positive note, I've already packed most of her things, clothes, jewelry, etc. I also threw in our wedding book, and every photo with her in it is packed in boxes. If and when she comes back for her things, I don't want her here any longer than necessary. And before you ask, no, I didn't ruin her clothes. Other than a few picture frames, nothing's broken. As of now, there's nothing else going on. I've told everyone I needed to tell. My doctor's appointment is set, my lawyer is working hard to get me out of this mess, and 90% of her stuff is boxed up. Honestly, I don't even know what's left. If she stays out of my way, this might be the smoothest divorce ever. Thanks for reading. Advice is always appreciated. Hey everyone, sorry I've been quiet for a while and didn't respond to comments or messages, but I think I've caught up now. Since the last update, I've been drowning in a pity party. Drinking, and more drinking. I'd say this is my first semi-sober moment since I found out everything. I can't really put into words how I feel. Maybe numb is the best word. In the last update, I told you I'd notified everyone, except Mia's sister, who I was close with. Well, that night after posting, I kept drinking and passed out on my back patio, surrounded by a bottle and some beer cans. I woke up to the smell of breakfast cooking. My first thought was, oh Christ, Mia's back and thinks breakfast will make up for what she's done. I got angry and threw myself out of the chair, ready for a fight. But to my surprise, it wasn't Mia. It was her sister, Emma. I stood there for a moment trying to calm down. But when Emma saw I was awake, she sprinted to me and wrapped her arms around me. She didn't say anything, just took my hand and led me to the table, putting a plate in front of me. As I ate, she told me how sorry she was and said that when Mia showed up at her house, She just said we were having problems and that everything would be fine in a few days. Then Emma told me that when I texted her about the divorce, she asked Mia if it was okay. Apparently, Mia broke down and told Emma everything. I scoffed and said there was no way Mia told her everything, then proceeded to explain what really happened. Emma told me Mia said it was a one-time thing and that I was blowing it out of proportion. I told Emma I had no intention of getting back together with Mia, and if that's why she was here, she was wasting her time. I also said that if she's in contact with Mia, she should tell her to find a lawyer. Emma laughed and said she wasn't here for her sister. She was here for me. She said, of course she'd be there for her sister, but that she and I were friends and she wouldn't abandon me, especially when I hadn't done anything wrong. I stood up, went around the table, and hugged her. I'd been worried this mess would ruin our friendship, and hearing her say that made me feel so much better. Emma stayed with me for 2 days in the guest bedroom and left this morning. As I prepared to leave for my cabin, which I owned before the marriage and Mia can't touch, I was gathering my hunting and fishing gear. She asked if she could join me, but I told her that as much as I'd like that, she should probably check in on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and left. I'm truly grateful to Emma for being there for me. And before anyone asks, she's not into me. She's 20, which is way too young for me. It's just a really good friendship. Almost forgot to mention, I went to the doctor, got tested, and should get results by Monday. I've reached out to Jack's fiancée a few times just to check on her. She says she's fine but doesn't know what to do. I told her if she wants to meet next week to vent, I'm more than happy to listen. Thank you all so much for reading, reaching out, and all the support and praise you've given. You've been a light during a truly dark time in my life. To anyone going through what I am, the only advice I can give is to keep your head down and focus on what you really want. Whether that's divorce or, if you're thinking about reconciling, set your goals one at a time. In my case, it was lawyer first, then doctor, and then notifying everyone close to me. But keep everything off the internet. Also, make sure to set aside time to process and release your feelings. Thanks again, and sorry these updates always end up so long. In my last post, I told you about Emma coming to stay at my place for a few days. She left when I was heading out to go hunting at my cabin. Good news, I got a buck, a nice fat 8-pointer, on my very first day out there. I was really happy about that because it gave me the rest of my time to go fishing. I only caught 2 fish, but they were decent sized, so I made one for dinner and butchered the other. I spent the rest of my trip cleaning my deer and enjoying the views of nature. Other than a drink or 2 a day, I stayed sober for my whole trip, as I promised. The drinking was just for last week. Now for the last few days, I got a call from my doctor, and I'm all clean. It wasn't much of a surprise since Mia and I hadn't had much passion in months, but you can never be too sure. I reached out to Jack's fiancée, but didn't hear back for a while. Eventually she replied, telling me she was staying with her family. She didn't say much, but staying with family usually means things aren't going well. At least she's safe and has all the support she might need. I told her if she needed anything, all she had to do was ask. She invited me to meet for coffee the next day, which I gladly agreed to. We met at the same grimy hipster coffee shop and talked for about 2 hours. We covered everything that happened with Mia and me. She wanted to know what steps I was taking, whether I was divorcing, or if there was any chance of reconciling. I told her that after someone cheats, that's it for me. The amount of selfishness and disrespect it takes to cheat, especially for a year, means she obviously didn't care about me. I asked her what her plan was, and she said she was confused. Everything she believed turned out to be lies. She wasn't sure if she should move on or forgive him. I told her if she could forgive someone for cheating that long, she was a better person than me. She said her whole family was telling her to forgive him and get married anyway. I was blunt and told her just because that's what her family wants, it doesn't mean she has to follow them. I said Jack clearly doesn't care about marriage. He cheated on his fiancée with my wife. If that doesn't prove he's not marriage material, I don't know what does. I told her she needed to do what felt right for her and not let anyone else make decisions that affect her life. When I found out, All I could do was try to trick my heart into forgiving Mia, but I just couldn't. I said I'd only talk to one person, but I'd already made my decision, and no one could change my mind, I bet, when she went to stay with her family. She had a pretty good idea what she wanted to do, but too many people got involved with their own opinions. I told her she just needed to follow her gut. Our brains and hearts can lie, but 9 times out of 10, if your gut says something's wrong, it's probably right. She thanked me and left. The next day, my lawyer messaged me that Mia had been successfully served at work. I thanked him for all his effort, especially with how fast he got it done. Not long after, Emma called to tell me Mia hadn't left her room all day and was sobbing in bed. I told her Mia was probably realizing how badly she messed up. Emma asked how my cabin trip went, and I told her everything. We talked briefly before hanging up. After I prepared myself and the house for my wife's inevitable explosion, I figured if she was going to lose it, it would be soon now that she'd been served. So I'm waiting patiently, biding my time. I've got Advil ready for what I can only assume will be a terrible headache. I told my friend and he agreed. If Mia showed up, he'd rush over to be a witness just in case things got out of hand. Otherwise, I'm just sitting here, waiting for Hurricane Mia to tear through my house. If or when she does, I'll post another update. Thanks for reading. About an hour after I posted last, I was waiting for Mia to show up at the house and go ballistic. I had no real reason to think she would, but with everything that's happened, I never really knew the woman. I went around to check all the cameras I had, inside and outside, to make sure they were working properly. I called my friend to let him know Mia had been served today and told him if she shows up, he needs to get here as soon as possible. I'm not going to jail because of this woman. Turns out I was right. Mia showed up at the house, banging on the door and screaming to be let in. I immediately called my friend and Emma to come over because Mia was beating down the door. She was cursing my name, begging me to let her in, calling me every name in the book and asking how I could be so heartless. She wasn't wrong. During all her screaming and banging, all I could do was laugh. Then I wondered why she didn't just walk in since she still had keys, at least as far as I knew. When my friend arrived, Mia was still screaming and cursing, so he started recording on his phone while staying in his truck. But this idiot brought his wife, Mia's friend, so she got out and tried to calm Mia down. She walked up, putting her arms around Mia, trying to get her to talk. Mia then slapped her across the face, screaming at her to mind her own business. That made my friend, who now has a video of the whole thing, call the police. Mia kept screaming and cursing until the police arrived. When they did, she tried hard to play the victim. One of the officers approached her, and she started crying, telling them I had hit her and thrown her out of the house. My friend and his wife told the other officer that when they arrived, Mia was yelling and banging on the door, so they couldn't confirm that I did what Mia accused me of. After the officer finished talking with my friend and his wife, he came to my door. When I opened it, Mia said, "There, that's him. He hit me. I want him arrested." The officer began to handcuff me, but I told him I could prove she was lying. All I needed was my phone. The officer stopped and asked me to show him the footage from the outside cameras. After reviewing the video, he apologized for jumping to conclusions and assuming I was at fault. I told him I didn't blame him, but then he told me they'd received 15 calls from neighbors, and during Mia's rant, she screamed, "He hit me!" So, the officers had already made their judgment. After dealing with the police for about half an hour, Mia was handcuffed and charged with disturbing the peace, public intoxication, and a DUI. As the police took me to the car, Emma showed up and came over to ask what happened. I showed her the video on my phone of the entire incident. Then the officer approached me to hand over the case number and some paperwork. Emma started asking questions about the charges, so I went back inside. She followed me shortly after and sat next to me. She told me she'd left her house for 10 minutes to run to the store, but when she got back, Mia was no longer in the living room. She figured Mia had gone to bed after drinking too much wine. Emma and I talked for a while, and she asked if she could stay the night. I told her she was welcome any time. She told me Mia had to spend the night in jail. I don't know why, but they could bail her out in the morning. She said that after I went back inside, she called her parents to explain the situation and ask if they could help bail Mia out, since Emma didn't have the funds. Later, we shared a beer together before heading to bed. When I woke up in the morning, Emma had already left to meet with her parents. I haven't heard from Mia, Emma, or their parents since, but I doubt it's been a pleasant conversation. I haven't heard from Mia since that night, but my lawyer was contacted by hers, letting him know he would be representing Mia. Finally, we can start this process. I also reached out to Jack's fiancée to see if she had any news on her end. We only texted back and forth, but she told me she had kicked him out of her house. Her father and brother packed up all his things and dropped them off at his place. She said her dad and brother wanted to beat him up, but she asked them not to. She just wants to put all this behind her and move on. She thanked me for checking on her and said her close friends were there for her when she needed them. I sent her the link to my Reddit page so she could see all the support you all have given both of us. On Friday, the moment I got off work, I raced home. My plan was to go back to my cabin for the weekend. When I arrived, Emma was in my driveway. She wanted to grab her sister's things and had a list of what Mia expected. I skimmed through it, and all but one item was already in a box or sitting in my garage waiting to be picked up. I told her I wasn't going to transport or touch anything here. I didn't want to be responsible if Mia claimed I'd destroyed her stuff. I told her I'd pay for a moving company to pack and take all Mia's things because I was heading to my cabin and didn't have time to deal with Mia's drama. She said that would be great and hoped I'd have fun. She took a box of Mia's clothes and loaded it into her car. Then she asked if she could tag along this time. I said sure and told her to go back home, drop off the box, and pack a bag for herself. By the time I went to the store and packed up the truck, she was pulling up. I locked my house and headed to the cabin with Emma. The weekend went really well. The last time I was up there, I realized what a gem that place is. It has a beautiful view and is completely secluded, so I don't have to deal with anyone. It's a place where you can truly breathe and relax. On Monday, I called a moving company, and by Tuesday, 3 guys with a big truck showed up and started loading. I had every box open and recorded them closing the boxes and picking them up. I took pictures of all the furniture and filmed the movers loading it. I thanked them for tolerating me and tipped each an extra $50. I then sent all the videos and photos to my lawyer and went about my day. The house feels empty, but also clean, without all her stuff here. When I started this process, my lawyer told me not to get rid of anything that could be considered shared property, so I put most of the furniture in a storage unit. I've been sleeping in the guest room since she left. Up until I started writing this post, I've been buying new furniture, and I'll most likely keep most of it in the garage since I now have the space. I won't be keeping the house, even if I win it in the divorce. It holds too many bad memories. Thanks for reading. It's been a while since I posted. I coach high school baseball, so between handling this divorce, dealing with my soon-to-be ex, and coaching, I don't have much free time right now. Quite a bit has happened, so this might be a long post. Please bear with me. A few days after the movers took Mia's things, my lawyer received paperwork from hers claiming I damaged her stuff and demanding $1,500 or she would take me to court. My lawyer sent her all the videos and pictures, asking exactly what damages she was referring to. He told me this just shows how unhinged she is. It might be a headache now, but when it's time for court, this will be perfect evidence. I don't think her lawyer was ready for how thorough I am, documenting everything with photos and videos. When I found out about my wife's affair, for some reason I was drawn to this page. I read all the horror stories about what people's exes had done to them, and I absolutely refused to become just another one of those stories. I prepared myself for nearly every possible outcome and accusation she could throw at me. I wouldn't put anything past her at this point. Mia would call me every other day or so, but I never answered. If she left a voicemail, I didn't bother listening. I just forwarded it to my lawyer. Every time I sent my lawyer something, he told me, "You're a lawyer's wet dream. You listen to everything I say, and you've gathered a mountain of evidence on your own. I haven't had a client do so well." He wasn't exaggerating when he said that. It's what he says every time, but it always made me smile. Getting that reassurance from him that I was doing everything right made me feel a little better about the whole situation. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, my lawyer told me we had enough evidence to bury her without going to court, and if that didn't work, it would still look good for us that we tried. So, we set a date a week ago to meet in a neutral lawyer's office. Before the meeting, he told me, no matter what Mia said, don't react. Everything we did would be recorded for a judge to see if it went to court. We arrived early in the morning and went into the office. To my surprise, Mia was already there with her lawyer. The lawyers greeted each other, and Mia and I sat silently, waiting for what would happen. Mia's lawyer started by asking what we had to offer. Mine scoffed and said that, with the mountain of evidence of her infidelity and inappropriate behavior, the only thing we'd offer was half the selling price of the house and half the savings account. That's more than any judge would award. Basically, she'd be leaving with what she came into the marriage with. Then he looked directly at Mia and said, if she chose to go to court, he would put every message in front of the judge, making her read them all aloud. He would show every photo in court, make her describe in detail what she was doing in each one, then bring up her recent charges and play the video from that night. Mia started tearing up and looked at me, asking if there was anything she could do to make things right. I said, you've been cheating on me since before our wedding. All I can prove is a few weeks before, but I expect it was much longer. There's nothing you could do to make me forget or forgive what you've done. Sign the papers. It's more than you deserve, and I want to be done with this whole sham you created. She cried loudly for 15 minutes, excusing herself to the restroom. When she returned, still in tears, she signed the papers and walked out. Not long after, so in about a month, everything will be filed. All that'll be left is selling the house. I want to thank you all for reading and for all the advice you've given. I don't expect anything else to happen, but if it does, I'll let you know. This will probably be my last post. So, again, thank you all. I hope what's happened to me helps at least one person out there.